How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of our Versus series. My name is Rudy Littrell.
My name is Q.
And then we're both going to say we are the Mystic Mentors, okay?
All right.
Ready? And we are the Mystic Mentors. I'll go ahead and jump right in. Today, I'm playing, once again, Rakdos. Now, this is the more combo-centric version of Rakdos with all the synergy pieces that work around the cat and the oven, as well as Mayhem Devil being the biggest finisher. But otherwise, yeah, we're just hoping to get two pieces of the puzzle, thought seize our opponent's resources, and then have an aggressive game plan to try and finish it out.
I always love this deck. I love mine more. I'm on mono green right now. It is Pioneer's premier ramp deck. You got your elves, a couple of big creatures. Our game plan is to kind of just push through any pressure that they're going with, utilizing our normally great top decks, trying to land a Karn to shut off any artifacts they're running. Also, later in the game, we'll be able to use Karn to get a neat little combo from our sideboard, as our sideboard is all artifacts that Karn can grab.
All right, without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Let's go.
Welcome back to another Versus series. Q won the die roll, Rudy keeps 7, and Q mulligans to 6. Here's a look at Rudy's hand, and here's a look at Q's. Q puts Oath of Nissa on the bottom. Q starts off game 1 with a Forest and a Llanowar Elves, then passes. Rudy plays a Blackcleave Cliffs, then pushes the Elf, then passes. Q draws, plays a second Forest, then casts a Wolf Willow Haven, attaching it to a Forest. Then he passes the turn. Rudy plays a Den of the Bugbear, then casts Blood Tithe Harvester, getting a blood token, then passes back. Q draws, casts a Kiora, downticks Kiora to untap the Enchanted Forest, and then casts an Elvish Mystic, and passes. Rudy draws, goes to combat, attacks Kiora for 3. Q chooses not to block, then Rudy plays a Sulphurous Springs, and casts a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, gets a Goblin Shaman, and passes. Q draws, taps his elf, uses Kiora to untap the Enchanted Forest, and gets a total of 6 mana, using it for a Storm the Festival. He finds an Old Growth Troll, and a Karn, the Great Creator. The Troll triggers Kiora, drawing Q a card. He upticks with Karn with no target, then passes the turn. Rudy draws, triggering his Fable, he discards a Cauldron Familiar and a land, drawing 2 cards. Then he plays an untapped Blood Crypt, losing 2 life, then targets the Old Growth Troll with a Claim the Firstborn, taking it for the turn. Going to combat, he attacks and kills both of Q's Planeswalkers, the Goblin Shaman also getting Rudy a treasure token. After combat, he casts another Fable of the Mirror Breaker and uses the treasure to also cast a Cauldron Familiar, draining Q for 1. He then returns the troll and passes the turn. Q draws, casts another Old Growth Troll, goes to combat and attacks with the other. Rudy chooses not to block, then Q simply passes. Rudy draws, triggering both his Fables, discarding a land and drawing a card. Rudy casts a Witch's Oven and an Unlikely Witness. Then he passes the turn. Q draws, casts a Cavalier of Thorns, finds a Forest, and puts the rest into the graveyard. Q goes to combat, attacking Rudy with a Troll. Rudy blocks with a Witness, taking 3 to trample, and exiling 2 cards from the top of his library, allowing him to play one of those cards until the end of his next turn. Q passes the turn, and at his end step, Rudy puts the cat in the oven to cycle it for a food, then gets the cat back, draining Q for 1. Rudy draws, triggering his Fable, flipping it. Rudy copies his Blood Tithe Harvester with a flipped Fable, and using the hasted copy to kill an Old Growth Troll. Q puts the troll on a Forest, Rudy goes to combat and attacks with a single Goblin Shaman, getting a treasure token. Q blocks, and using the treasure, Rudy casts a Fatal Push from exile, killing the other Old Growth Troll. Q puts the other troll onto another Forest, after that Rudy passes. Q untaps, draws, plays a Forest, casts Pelucranos Reborn, taps into his Transform ability, also paying 2 life, and passes the turn. At Q's end step, Rudy cycles the cat once more. Rudy draws, triggering Fable, discarding a land, and drawing a card. Rudy makes 2 copies of Blood Tithe Harvester, using his flipped Fables. He uses them to kill both Polykranos and Cavalier of Thorns. Q uses Cavalier's Death Trigger to put Storm the Festival on top of his library. Rudy casts another Blood Tithe Harvester, getting another blood token, then goes to combat and attacks Q with 2 Goblin Shamans and a cat, getting 2 treasure tokens. After combat, he passes the turn. Q draws the Storm, casts the Storm, finds a Llanowar Elves and a Wolf Willow Haven. He casts a Pelucranos Reborn, then passes. At his end step, Rudy cycles the cat, draining Q for 1. Rudy draws. He uses the blood token to discard a land, then draw. He does so again, then plays a second Witch's Oven. He then copies his Harvesters with his Fables to kill Q's blockers and attacks for lethal.
KO.
On to the sideboarding. Q plays mono green, so there's only enough room in there for Karn's toys. He won't be putting anything in or taking anything out. Rudy, however, sides out 3 Cauldron Familiar, 3 Unlucky Witness, and a Fable of the Mirror Breaker for 2 Damping Spheres, 2 Furnace Rains, 1 Abrade, 1 Duress, and 1 Kolaghan's Command. Neither player mulligans, and Q decides to be on the play. Here's a look at Rudy's hand, and here's a look at Q's. Q starts it off by playing a Forest into Llanowar Elves, then passes. Rudy draws, plays a Black Cleaves Cliffs, and then pushes the elf, then passes. Q draws, plays a Nykthos, and passes. Rudy draws, plays a Hive of the Eye Tyrant, and casts Thoughtseize, taking Q's Kiora and losing 2 life. Q draws, plays a Boseiju, and passes. Rudy plays a tapped Den, and passes. Q draws, plays a Wolf Willowhaven attached to a forest, then passes. Rudy draws, casts a Mayhem Devil, and passes the turn. Q taps his lands, floating the mana, plays another Nykthos, then plays a Cavalier, finding Lair of the Hydra. He then passes the turn. Rudy draws, casts another Mayhem Devil, and passes. Q draws, casts his Karn, downticks it, gets a Treasure Vault from his sideboard. He plays it as a land for turn, and casts another Wolf Willowhaven on the already enchanted forest, and passes. Rudy draws, casts Furnace Rains targeting Cavalier of Thorns, taking it for the turn, then attacks with both Devils and a Cavalier to kill Karn and hit Q for 8, also getting a treasure token. Rudy then cracks the treasure, taking 2 and dealing 2 with the Devils for a Thoughtseize, taking another Karn from Q's hand. Q draws, activates Nykthos, casts another Karn, downticks for a Sky Console flagship, then casts the flagship, which enters and deals 3 to a Devil. Q then passes the turn. Rudy draws, finally hits his 4th land, plays it for the turn, then passes. Q draws, downticks Karn for an Esika's Chariot, activates Nykthos to cast the Chariot, then he casts an Oath of Nissa, finding a Cavalier of Thorns. He activates his Hydra for 1, crews his ship, and attacks. On the attack, Q targets the Devil for 3 damage. In response, Rudy sacrifices it to a Deadly Dispute, dealing 1 damage to Karn, drawing 2 cards and making a treasure token, then taking 11 damage from the attack. Rudy draws, considers his option, and can't quite see a way out, eventually scooping the lethal on the next turn.
KO.
Nothing changes in sideboards. Both players decide to keep their 7. Here's a look at Rudy's hand. Now Q's. Rudy starts it off with a Hive of the Eye Tyrant, and he passes. Q draws, plays a Forest, then passes. Rudy draws, plays a Seer Step Pathway, casts a Bloodtithe Harvester, and gets a Blood token, then passes. Q plays a Forest, then casts a Wolf Willowhaven onto one of his forests, and passes the turn. Rudy draws, plays a Sulphur Springs, casts another Bloodtithe Harvester, getting another Blood token, moving to combat and attacking Q for 3. He then loses 1 life to a Sulphur Springs to produce a black mana, casting Duress, and taking Q's Kiora. Rudy then passes the turn. Q plays a Nykthos, casts a Karn the Great Creator, downticks the Karn for a Treasure Vault from his sideboard, then Q passes. Rudy draws, plays a tapped Blood Crypt, moves to combat, hitting Q for 3 and killing Karn. After combat, Rudy casts a Kroxa, and Q discards a Pelucranos from the ETB. Q draws, plays a Treasure Vault, then casts Cavalier of Thorns, finding a forest, notably putting Storm the Festival into his graveyard, then passes. Rudy draws, goes right to combat, then attacks with a Harvester. Q blocks, and after combat, Rudy uses his second Harvester to kill Q's Cavalier, who, on its death, puts Kiora on the top of his library. Rudy passes the turn. Q draws his Kiora, casts a Storm the Festival from his hand, finds a Pelucranos Reborn, and a Wolf Willowhaven that he puts onto the same forest as the other one. Then he passes the turn. Rudy draws, triggering his Fable, discarding Thoughtseize in a land, drawing 2 cards. Rudy casts a Kroxa from his graveyard, losing 1 life to Sulphur Springs, and Q discards a Wolf Willowhaven to the trigger. Rudy then targets Pelucranos with Acclaim the Firstborn and attacks Q for 6, also producing a treasure in the process. Q draws, casts a Cavalier, activates Nykthos in response to the Cavalier trigger, finds another Nykthos, casts a Kiora with his floating mana, and activates Nykthos again. Downticks Kiora to untap and activate Nykthos again. Using all but 2 of his floating mana, he casts Storm the Festival from his graveyard. He finds a Karn and another Kiora. He downticks his Karn to get a Chain Veil from his sideboard. He downticks his new Kiora to untap and again activates Nykthos. Rudy gets up and goes for a short jaunt to rest his body and soul, while Q explains his combo to no one, ultimately winning the game.
KO.
How's it going, everybody? Rudy here. We didn't have time to record an ending segment for that video, so I'm just going to take this time to remind you to like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to see more of the Mystic Mentors, the link below is to our website. That's pretty much everything. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll see you in the next one.